Good morning, ladies! So, this video will be for world religion, and the main purpose of this video is to aid you remember what we discussed in our first week of discussion. So, I remember asking you, well, very similar to what I did in philosophy, asking you what you recall of or remember whenever you hear the word religion. And of course, many of you were able to identify keywords. You said, number one, religion talks about faith. It talks about doctrine. It talks about ways of doing things in a religious fashion, rituals and liturgy, God, the divine. And technically, all of you are correct in saying that religion talks about all of these things. But it seems to me that when we think of religion from this perspective, we are actually differing so much from the purpose of what this subject is. World religion as a subject is not intended for us to become better Christians or better Muslims or become Muslims or Buddhists or Jews. It's not meant to convert you. Rather, the main purpose of world religion is to make you better humans. When we talk about religion only from the perspective of rituals and morals, we forget that religion is also a mechanism by which man is able to engage themselves in meaningful discussion, discourse, relationships, cooperation with other people. Religion is not just a passive way of connecting yourself to God. From the humanistic point of view, religion is also a product of man's rationality. It is an interpretation of how he sees the world, thus becomes a cultural expression. Let's talk about what culture is first. When we talk about culture, we automatically think about how things are done. For example, that siren. When you hear when you hear a siren, the sound of a siren, automatically it comes to your mind an emergency. An ambulance taking somebody who is ill to a hospital. Or perhaps a police apprehending some criminals. Or a firefighter trying to contain fire or conflagration. Automatically, when we say culture, it seems like it's a stimulus to respond in a way that we think of ways of doing things. Ano ba yung mga kultural na pag sinabing kultura ng Pilipinas, automatically naiisip natin itik-itik o kaya pagmamano, fiesta, kundiman, Nora Honor, Fernando Po Jr. But those are external expressions of culture. What is culture? Culture is a justification of how man sees the world. Example, if you realize that you are living in the Philippines, which is a tropical country, of course you will not wear in this humid temperature a very thick clothing. Hindi tayo magsusuot ng jacket sa gitna ng EDSA dahil ang init-init sa Pilipinas. Kaya nga in the Philippines, it's acceptable for men to be walking naked, half naked in the streets. Acceptable sa Pilipinas na yung mga tatay nyo walang pang itaas. Pero hindi yan acceptable kung nasa North Pole siya. Hindi rin yan acceptable kung ang tatay nyo ay naka-half naked sa Rome. Because in Rome, it's cold. And religion plays a very crucial part in the development of how people conceive themselves and their surroundings. Culture justifies how we view the world. Mainit sa Pilipinas, kaya okay lang nakahubad. Mainit sa Pilipinas, kaya hindi uso dito ang mga jacket. Nagja-jacket lang tayo pag December, January, and February. Kaya nga sa Pilipinas, ang mga mahasarap na kakanin, ice-based. Another thing, in the Philippines, we view our country to be highly agricultural. That's why ang dami nating tawag sa bigas. Ang bigas na, ang rice na hilaw, bigas. Ang rice na naluto, sinaing. Ang rice, ang sinaing na natusta o nasunog, tutong. Ang sinaing na niluto ulit sa umaga, fried rice, anong tawag doon? Sinangag. Diba? Ang rice na dikit-dikit at glutinous, malagkit. Ang rice na nakalagay sa loob ng isang nyog, suman. Iba't ibang klase ang tawag natin sa rice. Why? Because our culture dictates to us that we are an agricultural country which is basically thriving on the consumption of rice. Sa Amerika, ang tawag lang nila sa rice, rice. Wala silang tawag na iba doon. They just call it rice. Because it's not part of their culture. And so again, I'm saying religion is culture. And when you say religion is culture, it is how we view the world. It is how we understand the world. And how do we understand the world? How do we understand our interconnection to it? Well, let me explain to you first before we proceed to that question. What is religiosity from a dictionary? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Religiosity or being religious has 3 meanings according to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Sorry again for the sound of the motorcycle. The first definition is religiosity is directed to a divine being. So in other words, religiosity is directed to God. There is an object of religiosity and religious practices. It is God. And what is God? God is a reality beyond us. Number 2, religiosity is the exercise of rituals and practices that are repeatedly done over a period of time, and you just don't do it because it's traditional and it's passed on to you. You do it because you are convinced that it should be done in order for you to fulfill your obligation to God. And number 3, being religious is being faithful, loyal, and exercising a degree of fidelity. Now, if religiosity talks about number 1, directed to God, number 2, an exercise of rituals, and number 3, fidelity, can we then say that everything, all human activities that have a tinge of any of these 3 characteristics can be considered religious? Now, let me point this out to you. Do you mean to say that the DDS followers, Mocha Uson and Bongo, are religious? Do you mean to say that the fans of Catherine Bernardo and Daniel Padilla are all religious because they are doing repeatedly these actions directed to Daniel Padilla and Kathleen Bernardo? Do you mean to say that whenever, for example, I watch every day a K-pop drama, I am exercising a religious function? We go to school every day. Does that mean we are religious? We attend online classes every day. Does that mean we are religious? Well, the variance of the word religious can mean indeed we are. But is it in the context of religion? Ladies, let me clarify to you. The world is viewed by people into two distinctions or in a binary, but not of opposition. Okay? People view the world as either sacred or profane. Now you realize I have my background, these images, and they are sacred images. I cannot just put them anywhere. For example, a bodega. I cannot just put them in a playground because they are sacred images. When we say sacred, they are set aside. They are differentiated and they are consecrated for the purpose of being considered holy. A sacred thing is a consecrated thing. A profane thing is something that is material or trivial. Example, I have here books. And this book is not necessarily, it is not necessary for me to keep this book in church. It's not necessary for me to keep this book in a library. I can just put it in the living room or in my room. I can read this book inside the bathroom. I can read this book while traveling. I can even read this book in a playground. Because for me, this book is profane, meaning it's secular. It does not serve any consecrated purpose. And that is where the distinction comes in. Whenever, for example, we go to church to attend Mass, that is a religious activity. But whenever, for example, I answer a comment by a Duterte fanatic in Facebook, that is a profane activity. What does that mean? Religious actions are directed towards the sacred. And if that will be the case, we can say that not all activities in which man is engaged religiously can be considered religion because not all of them are directed towards the sacred. I hope that is clear. Now, if that is the case, ladies, the sacred is the object of religion. And what is the sacred? Is God? Can we be convinced that there really is a God? Did anyone see God? Did you encounter Him along the streets? Or, as my example, as I use my example in our classes, you were asked, who created you? And you will say, God. But when you were born, there was no headline at all of God coming to earth to create you. How can we be convinced that what we are doing in religion, which is directed to God, is not a futile exercise, especially that we are not sure and certain that there is a God? Let me be clear with this. God is not just how we perceive Him to be. He's not just a personified being. God is somebody greater than us. God may be an idea, a concept, a thought that is beyond us, encompassing. And so, even if we don't see an evidence of Him, physical or material in our daily experiences, We know that beyond our vulnerability and limitations as human beings, there is someone greater than us. Who created you? You can say, I was born because my parents got married, and because of that marriage, I was produced. Yes, correct. But who created your parents, and who created the parents of your parents? And we will ask eventually, where did it all start? And now we are citing Thomas Aquinas, the first cause. What is the beginning of all these things? That there is God. That beyond our limitation, beyond our limited lifespan on earth, there is something that will remain, and that is God. And this God will remain unchanging for the rest of eternity. You see, that sound of the motor will only pass. It will not stay, but God will stay. The same intensity, the same vibrancy, the same sound, the same duration. He's constant. And the constancy of that is also an idea. Why do we need to engage in religion if, for example, if we ask ourselves, we can't be certain that there is God? And even if there is a God, He becomes abstract. Religion gives us meaning. Religion makes us transcend the ordinariness and limitations and vulnerabilities of every day. Religion gives us purpose. In the midst of this pandemic, is there any reason for us to continue believing that everything will be back to normal? In the midst of all these changes in governance, in the midst of allegations of corruption, will there be reason for us, or is there any reason for us to continue believing and thinking that indeed there will come a time that everything will be changed? I think there is. Because in the end, even if we are immersed in such profound feelings of negativity, there will always be that vision that we will overcome. Let me point out again this very important matter. Number one, religion is directed to God. It is composed of rituals, and it is about being faithful and loyal. Now, even if we are unclear, there is value in subscribing to religion because it gives us meaning, and this meaning helps us to transcend. And lastly, religion shapes our view of the world. Religion makes us conform to how the world sees how the world is. Religion becomes a distinguishing factor in how we forge who we are as persons. I remember giving you as example the men and women of India who desire to bathe in the river Ganges for the salvation of their souls, for the cleansing of their spirits from sin and temptation, and to get good fortune. Why is that so? Because their religion would make them realize and think that everything is God. And the mother Ganges, because of its water, provides them with life. Can we question their perspective? No. Because that is how they view the world. And this view of the world stems from an understanding of themselves in relation to a divine creature or being, divine being, not a creature. can we ask and can we question the Nazareno devotees when they go to Quiapo to pull the carriage of the Nazarene, even if we know it's highly dangerous to be doing that because of the stampede and the danger of being crushed to death? No, we cannot question people because that is how they view the world. They view the world as God working in it. Can you question my family having these religious images in our house? I don't think so, because our experience differs from yours. Now let me summarize everything that I'm trying to say here. The introduction to religion, number one, the subject is not a story or not a narration of how to become better believers. We are here to become better person who appreciates distinctions. And what is distinction? That people view the world differently. And because they view the world differently, every view and attitudes created from these various perspectives is valid. And so we are called towards tolerance. We are called towards greater appreciation. Because only then will we be able to appreciate and recognize the value of identities forged in religion and the value of the societies and connections created in it. I hope that is clear. Okay? Please work on your assignments or your tasks. I hope this video helps. Thank you. Goodbye.